$240 million. That's how much money my daddy saved South Carolina ratepayers. Now, this story got everything, allegedly. Romance, corruption, deaths under mysterious circumstances, days before trial, suspected murders, autopsies, machine guns, drive-by shootings. Did I say corruption? Subterfuge, a state-to-state battle across the nation over coal. My daddy put a Kentucky coal company into bankruptcy in Texas by interpleading $34 million of their dollars into a Berkeley County clerk's office and making them deliver their coal to South Carolina in a case that spanned 11 courts in 6 states and even had a stop in Washington, D.C. That would ultimately result in the single largest settlement ever recovered on behalf of a South Carolina governmental agency. According to the federal indictments, here's how it all went down. A high-level Santee Cooper executive, and he's in charge of negotiating contracts. So he goes ahead, he negotiates a few for himself, $50,000 every 6 months, $1 million to use his influence to push somebody to purchase a company, and some other favors. But all of that together ends up costing the Santee Cooper ratepayers $60 million. Now, we don't know any of that yet because it's the beginning of 1989, and Santee Cooper has only just asked SLED to look into the relationship between a coal buyer and a coal supplier. Later, a SLED spokesperson would say, it all started, as I understand it, that it was a prominent person within their ranks that was involved romantically with another. Now, I'm not sure who the jealous lover was, but somebody snitched. While the wheels are coming off the wagon here in South Carolina, the president of Great Western Coal Company is under a separate, unrelated federal investigation in Florida. Our SLED probe here in South Carolina finds that the president of Great Western Coal, while traveling to his home in Tennessee, is shot at with a machine gun by an unknown driver who flees the scene. That was reported in the state. November 21st, 1990, the day before Thanksgiving. Always one to make a grand entrance. That's the day my daddy files his complaint in Charleston County Court. He sues Great Western Coal, Great Western Coal Kentucky, the coal company president personally, and personally the Santee Cooper retired executive. Now, he doesn't just sue him for nothing. He sues him for civil conspiracy, fraud, fraudulent interference with an employment contract, breach of fiduciary duty. These allegations, they're stark. He lays it right out, that this former vice president got secret cash payments and other things of value to inflate coal prices and accept substandard coal. In all, they estimate he was getting about 10% of every bill in Santee Cooper's territory. And the best quote from the complaint is that Great Western maliciously and without justification induced the defendant to violate his fiduciary obligations. As with many things my daddy was involved in, this case turned into a real fight real fast, and it got nasty. But that's what happens when you have a defendant who has limitless resources. It puts you at a serious disadvantage. Or at least it would for most people. See, my old man and my Uncle Alvin, Uncle Yaya, they figured out that Santee Cooper accounted for 70% of Great Western's income. So what they did was they used South Carolina's prejudgment attachment statute to interplead the contractual money into the Berkeley County Clerk of Court's office. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is that starting April 1991, every month, Santee Cooper wrote a check for $6,100,000. And instead of putting it in the mail, they took it to the Berkeley County Clerk's office and deposited in an account there. $6 million to the clerk, $0 to Great Western. And at the same time, the coal company had to continue to deliver their shipments on time in full, or they'd be in breach of the contract. So, April, $6.1 million with the clerk. Next month, $12.2 million with the clerk. Great Western appeals, goes to the Fourth Circuit. They win, but not before the next check hits. Bam, $18.3 million in the clerk's office to lose, and everybody knew that. So when they heard that he had lost the Fourth Circuit, they said, Mr. Howe, what are your thoughts? Daddy told him, well, we had authority to attach up to $20 million, and we have here over $18 million. Now, of course, until this appellate court ruling, Nothing precluded us from coming back and asking the court to increase that amount, but for the moment, we're pleased with 18.3. Now, our focus is going to go back to the original lawsuit and continue to plow ahead with that, though in the immediate future, there are no hearings scheduled. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. One of the reasons that my daddy wasn't worried about losing to the Fourth Circuit was a separate court had just ruled that it was okay for them to continue withholding the money. And so 18 grew and grew until finally it peaks at about $33 million in the Berkeley County Clerk's office in 1991. Now, while the Berkeley County Clerk's office is looking at more money than they've ever heard of, the case isn't static in other places. In Charleston, a federal grand jury had indicted the Santee Cooper executive on extortion and conspiracy charges, up to 60 years in jail and $750,000 in fines. Now, these federal indictments, they're nothing to sneeze at. When you see one, they've got you. But U.S. Attorney Bart Daniel, he explained it beautifully. This indictment, it alleges, quite simply, that the defendant sold his public office for personal gain. Now, we fast forward to February 2nd of 1992, 2 days before the federal trial is about to begin. The Santee Cooper executive is hunting alone in Berkeley County, shooting quail by him using a 28-gauge shotgun. Hours after he leaves to go hunting, he's found on the preserve by another group, dead from a shotgun blast to the chest. 3 days before this, he had told his brother, "There's 2 people out there who'd really like to see me out of the way." While the coroner's office ruled it to be an accident, the 12-gauge shotgun, which he was not hunting with, was found resting across the raised tailgate of his truck, pointed directly at where his chest was when he was standing. Unmoved, the blast, I suppose. Now, federal investigators said they had seen similar mysterious cases in Florida and Alabama, also involving utility executives. The sheriff said what I can prove and what I believe are 2 different things. Sled testing found that the gun was not apt to misfire, and numerous tests showed it was working perfectly. DNR spokesperson said it would be unusual for a hunter to leave a loaded gun in the back of his vehicle, allegedly since deer season. And there were 5 other people that Norman was expected to testify against. Despite all of that, his death was ruled an accident. U.S. Attorney Scott Schools said, "We never had an opportunity to speak with him about these things." Now, upon learning of his death, the press also wanted to speak to my daddy. When they asked Dad what he thought, he said, "The death won't affect the pending action against the other defendants." Very heartwarming. Now, if you'll recall the $33 million sitting in the Berkeley County Clerk of Court's office, it is now April of 1992, 18 months after filing the lawsuit. And Great Western Coal's whole corporate family is declaring bankruptcy. They file in Chapter 11 in Houston, Texas. The chairman of the company blames failure of efforts to settle and compromise in the South Carolina litigation, going on to say that this whole Chapter 11, this is just merely addressed at getting this litigation resolved. Daddy's response was, it's a significant step for them to take. Now, it's May of 1992 in a bankruptcy court in Texas, and they take that $34 million out of the Berkeley County Clerk's office and move it to the Texas bankruptcy court. Again, Daddy doesn't like to lose. And when the press asked him for his response, he said, well, the Houston account will merely draw more interest than the South Carolina account. Great Western Coal Company settles the case in June of 1992. And in July of 92, the details become public. And an AP reporter writes, a 19-month legal dispute over alleged price fixing means big savings for South Carolina utility customers and a new lease on life for a troubled Eastern Kentucky coal company. The terms of the settlement are also made public, and they are Santee Cooper relinquishes the $33 million they've been hanging on to, a new 11-year contract for 1.7 million tons per year, Grand Western waiving all claims against Santee Cooper, projected rate-pay savings, $240 million. What the AP article did not mention was the copious amounts of bad blood between my daddy and Great Western Coal Company, which was not helped when they were compelled to produce internal communications, and it was found that he was very commonly referred to as, quote, the devil. Now we fast forward again to July of 1993. The South Carolina Supreme Court rules in a very significant ruling that is still applicable to this day, that the case against the Great Western president is subject to arbitration. That was a big win for them. But as Daddy put it at the time, that ruling very well might have helped Great Western, but they've already settled. Now, I would be remiss if I told you that was the happy ending. See, when the details of the settlement came out, the details of the fee came out, and people were pretty mad about how much my old man got paid. I'm sure it didn't help that he would have been endlessly pleased with himself for winning. I mean, smug to death. One representative, one state rep from Charleston, called Daddy's fee obscene. Now, Santee Cooper, to their credit, did come to his defense, the president at the time saying, "The litigation has been difficult, hard-fought, and intense. The amount of the fee is only 2.5% of the saving, and hiring Howe was the right thing to do. We won, and the proof is in the pudding." Now, what does it all mean? Why does it matter? Why is it important all these years later? Well, first and foremost, I think it's a fabulous story that not many people know. And I hope it contained all of the elements I promised you it would. But more importantly, this case made precedent. It made enemies. It made history. And it made the cost of corruption for everybody involved visible in a way that very few civil cases ever do.